Taking a step back, I want to talk about some of the units that we talked about during our DLC unit speculation when we talked about Grom the Paunch and Eltharion the Grim. In that video, I talked about a number of things that are not in the game, or things that are from the Monstrous Arcanum, a number of stuff that I think would make for really cool centerpiece units, so on and so forth. So, since I've got so much time between now and supposedly the next DLC, which is rumored to be May or April according to Grace's Reddit post, we have some time to explore the lore behind some of the units that I was recommending or speculating could possibly be a part of this DLC. So the way I'm going to do this is read the lore blurb of the corresponding unit from either the Monstrous Arcanum or any of the other kind of deeper lore that I can dig up. Then from there, we'll go through the rules of those respective units. I've got a couple up my sleeve right now, so we're going to start today with the Rogue Idol of Gork, or Mork, depending on which one it is. And then we're going to talk about the Arcane Phoenix in a couple days, and I'll just kind of pick some of the ones that I think would make for a lot of fun to really kind of divulge or talk about in greater detail. Because I think with this DLC, we're going to start to see a lot more larger centerpiece units. I think that the Lizardmen have set a pretty dangerous, but a pretty crazy precedent of bringing things like the Dread Saurian to tabletop, or I'm sorry, from tabletop to Total War Warhammer. And this is not the first time we've seen things pulled from the Monstrous Arcanum. Indeed, of course, the Dread Saurian is from the Monstrous Arcanum. Same thing with Skin Wolves, with, oh gosh, what are they called? Famir. And Famir have also had a pretty wide sweeping pass through a lot of other portions of the game. But we also have the Mourngulls. All of these things are pretty crazy portions of the Monstrous Arcanum. So I think what it should be really explored when we take a look at these speculation videos are looking deeper into the Monstrous Arcanum for a lot of really cool ideas. I mean, there's stuff like Colossal Squigs, which I think would be another really good one we'll talk about in another video. Or there's like Toad Dragons, which Tamarcon rides. Like, there's all these crazy different dragons. We talked about the Shard Dragon in our Dwarf speculation video. So today, again, we're going to talk about the Rogue Idol of Gork, and I'm going to read the lore blurb here. I apologize if some of my readings are a little off. The only manuscript I have for Monstrous Arcanum is very blurry on the left and right sides, so I'm making out the words as best as possible. Let's jump into the lore on the Rogue Idol of Gork, or possibly Mork. Crushing armored knights, city walls, and just about anything else that gets in their way with their brutal fists, Rogue Idols of Gork are the living embodiments of the spirit of the Wa, gigantic stone and scrap effigies built in the shape of the greenskin gods and animated with their stone power. Arrows and broadswords break and shatter on their rock bodies as they smash a brutal path of destruction through an army, near impervious to the blows being rained upon them, lacking muscle and sinew to damage or blood to spill. Crudely fashioned from heaped stones and battlefield debris, they are unmentionably fetid and daubed with obscene glyphs and slogans. Some are no taller than a chapel door, the orcs being so eager to fight that they devote little time to building them. But when Greenskin's tribes gather together to form a huge wall, the idols can grow to immense proportions, as if one of the Greenskin gods have come to witness the carnage their boys are about to unleash. In war, Rogue Idols of Gork loom over almost anything, striding implacably forward with limbs the size of tree trunks and a malevolent grin on their leering face. Needing neither food nor rest, they do not tire, destroying the first enemy they find and crushing them in mere seconds, and then do the same to the next enemy, and then the next, and so on until the enemy is either utterly destroyed or the idol itself is pulverized. Such is the erratic nature of these monsters and the fickle power that animates them, that although created by the powers of orc shamans, their control over them is tenuous at best. They often rampage where they will, collapsing when the magic that animates them withers, only to reassemble themselves again as the winds of magic gather once more to storm force, sometimes years or even centuries later. At such times, often the only way to stop an idol is for a powerful sorcerer to control it, but without a battle in which it can release its fury, his dominance over the creature is at best quite unpredictable. So you have a really good idea of how terrifying these things actually are on the battlefield. Monstrous, almost treeman-esque constructs for the greenskins. And they've got a number of special rules, and there's a number of other things that kind of accompany them. But one thing I do want to jump into before we go balls deep on the Rogue Idol of Gork is the Effigy of Gork. Now, this is an old Storm of Chaos throwback. This is just something that never really kind of, I say, took off. I'd say the Rogue Idol of Gork kind of took it in its own way, but here's a little lore blurb on this from the Storm of Chaos. Enraged beyond reason by his battle with Crom the Conqueror, Grimgor's fury was so great that he received a revelation from Gork that led him to hew the effigy from rock. The effigy symbolizes the brutal power of Gork and acts to harness the power of the Wa. So it's really like a very first kind of prototype into what has now become a staple in 8th edition Warhammer 40k and in 2.0 Age of Sigmar, in that we're talking about placeable terrain pieces that actually buff up or help out your army. This is something way back. This was immovable, and it gave a blessing to your orcs in battle. So it was pretty interesting. You'd roll on a chart and you'd get either the Hand of Gork, Bash 'em Lads, or Here We Go, the bound spells. Then you could use those. It would help out with your leadership using a rule called Stop Messing Around. And then Gork likes a fight. Black Orcs are Gork's favorite, and he likes to see them get stuck in and not get perished because of magic, which is nowhere near so much fun. For each Black Orc lord or hero within 24 inches of the center of the effigy at the start of the enemy magic phase, add 1 die. So basically, I'm trying to tell you, you get magic resistance bonuses from this thing. So the reason I've brought this up is because I could actually see portions of it being applied to the Rogue Idol of Gork. Now, why that is because I think that the Rogue Idol itself doesn't have a ton of really great translatable rules for Total War Warhammer. So let's take a look now at the Rogue Idol of Gork and its stat line. Because it can be a number of ways. It can be a rock pile, a rogue idol, or a great idol. You can choose per 200 points a better stat line. And it has a bunch of special rules. It's a large target, as to be expected, because it's a gigantic moving rock. I don't know how you guys would not have guessed that. It's got stubborn, it's got terror, or causes terror. It's got killing blow, which we oftentimes see equated as anti-infantry and AP. Scaly skin, impact hits, which means whenever it charges, it does impact hits. Largest of monsters, then colossal beast, and then also the big un. Now the big un is its special rule. I'm going to read that real quick right here too. The Rogue Idol of Gork, or possibly Mork, is a personification of the spirit of the Wa. Imbued with so much potent orcish power, the rocks and stone, detritus and old scrap that make up a Rogue Idol's body is animated into a bestial likeness of a mighty orc warrior, both in behavior and savagery. If it is possible for a Rogue Idol to charge an enemy, it must do so. At the start of any turn that a Rogue Idol is not able to charge or is not already in combat, its player must roll a d6. On a roll of 1, it must charge a friendly unit if one is available to charge, or if no friendly units are available, the Rogue Idol bellows and stomps, but otherwise may do nothing this turn. So, while I think that's a really cool, flavorful rule for tabletop, I just don't think it... I think the Rampage mechanic for Total War Warhammer, while cool, I find it actually very cumbersome and annoying to deal with, to be totally honest with you. When I take a look at stuff like Cold One Knights, which are supposed to have this mastery over their Cold Ones and a whole really cool Dark Elf aesthetic attached to it, and they rampage, which is something that's not even in tabletop, it cheats the overall viability and usefulness of that unit. If I'm talking about it from a competitive standpoint, it's even less useful. Yes, it's AP and anti-large, and it is always used in competitive matches. I just find it a very tedious thing to have to work around. So, I would really hate to see this beautiful, awesome rogue idol added to the game and then suffer from a rampage mechanic. Now, I guess the way around that you could say is that if you're dealing with something like this Dreadsaurian that has 3 flavors, right? The Feral Dreadsaurian, the Dreadsaurian, and then the Shredder of Lustria. So if you've got those 3 flavors and they do the same thing for the Rogue Idol, which is Rock Pile, Rogue Idol, then Great Idol, let's just say the Great Idol would be a Regiment of Renown, then I could see it working. Have the Rock Pile, cost less, and have it have Rampage built into itself. Then I'm cool with that. But if I have to deal with a Rogue Idol that's going to Rampage because of this rule in tabletop, I think it's going to kind of cheat it. So going back now to the Effigy of Gork, I think that taking some of these rules and applying them to the Rogue Idol makes a lot of sense. I think the Rogue Idol would have a high melee defense and a high armor. I think it would have a low melee attack and a slow attack speed, but a high weapon strength. And I think that it being anti-infantry and AP makes a lot of sense. I think something cool like being able to throw portions of itself, like having a ranged characteristic to it, almost like a Cygor, would be very interesting as well. I think that might be making it a little too much, but I think at the same time, it would be a very cool, fun centerpiece unit that isn't a Doomdiver Catapult or a Rock Lava for the Greenskins as far as a moving, living artillery piece goes. And even further, if we're talking about the bound abilities from the Effigy of Gork and Storm of Chaos, we would get stuff like the Hand of Gork, Bash 'em Lads, and Here We Go. Now, the way I would see them probably doing this is maybe giving Here We Go and Hand of Gork as a bound ability to the Regiment of Renown version of this thing, or maybe even a different set of skills on the non-Regiment of Renown, something akin to the Slaanesha's Harvesters. When we take a look at the Doomfire Warlocks, how they have a different set of bound abilities. So I do think that bound abilities are a really cool kit to apply to units. I think it's a great way to add versatility to your army and not kind of being pigeonholed into a specific casting route, and add some cool stuff and more, I'd say, cool accessories to another unit. So I think that giving it a bound ability, one or two, either non-Regiment Renown or Regiment Renown, would make a lot of sense for the Rogue Idol of Gork. It's imbued with all this orcish magic. It makes a lot of sense to me. In addition to the other rule here is stop messing around, in which case it helps out with the animosity and leadership of orcs. So the Rogue Idol of Gork and Mork, as it is this, again, a big effigy, more or less, created by these orc shamans, I could see it kind of giving like an 8 leadership bonus to everything around it, kind of helping to pin the line down for you for the orcs. And I think that we don't have impact hits in this game, but I think giving it a good charge bonus would kind of take that benefit of impact hits. We've talked about this a little bit when it comes to Ogre Kingdoms, and Ogre Kingdoms needing some sort of translation of impact hits, and it probably being a pretty sizable buff to their charge bonuses. But I guess the caveat here is that it's going to be a pretty slow moving construct, so it can kind of get away quickly. And maybe even it could give a slight bonus to all, it says Black Orc Lords and Heroes, and we don't have those in the game. Perhaps that could be the thing that is added with this DLC, is that we do get access to Black Orc Lords and Heroes. But, you know, barring that, maybe it just adds to the melee attack of any kind of hero or lord unit around the Idol of Gork. Kind of like something like the Guardian passive, but opposite. Rather than giving physical resistance, it maybe gives like a 10% buff to weapon strength, or 8 melee attack, whatever it is. Something that gives that kind of little tiny bonus and buff. So I would see the Rogue Idol of Gork and Mork not just simply as a pure aggression model for Total War Warhammer. I think that it has to have a little bit of a support role in it. And when you take a look at the the Dread Saurian and the Shredder of Lustria, it doesn't necessarily have a support role, but it does more than just slash things around with its tail. It does have that Hadab on its back that does quite a bit of poison damage. So I think kind of adding this to this character, maybe a short range lob of a stone that it can chuck out at things, or the ability to buff up the orc front line. I think that's a way to make the Rogue Idol of Gork and Mork appealing to an army, and not just simply being a really cool centerpiece that can stomp things, which is pretty fucking cool either way. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little foray here into the Rogue Idol of Gork and Mork, and you enjoy me kind of exploring some of these other minor units that have made their appearances in Monstrous Arcanums or in Storm of Chaos, other portions of the lore that I think are very worth diving into. I mean, Creative Assembly has been pretty bold in their expansion of Total War Warhammer and trying to make it interesting for us. Vampire Coast is almost entirely made up by Creative Assembly. They've kind of taken a lot of liberties with it. So hopefully they do the same thing here, and we kind of see a lot more brought into this game. Like, I know that Games Workshop is playing a lot with Zotes being added to Warhammer 40k. So I would love to see Zotes added to like Beastmen or Wood Elves, because they were part of those, the expanding lore behind those two armies. So I'd love to kind of see those pigeonholed in towards the end of the life cycle of Total War Warhammer 2. But go ahead and let me know in the comment section below some other units you'd love to hear the lore about, or ones you've heard in hearsay where you're like, oh, what the hell's that thing? I would love to just kind of dive in those with you. I'll continue to run this series throughout the next couple of weeks, just to kind of give you guys some more interesting Warhammer Fantasy lore, because I think I've covered a lot of the bigger, bolder subjects, and this kind of gives a little bit more life to that subject without kind of completely abandoning it. But as always, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that action, but have a good one, and take care.